All right, everybody, we got another very special guest for y'all. Everybody, welcome to the show, Skylar Patridge. How's it going, Skylar?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for being on the show. Glad to finally have you here.
Yes.
And as we do with all our first time guests, we like to do a little bit of an origin story. So I know you got some stuff out there now, but what got you into comics? I know you do graphic design, right? So where did you make that change over to comic books?
Comics was 100%. I would say probably from early childhood they were always in my life. So cool. I had an older brother, and I wanted to do everything that he did. So he read comics and played video games and did all that stuff. So naturally, I had to do those as well. But yeah, so comics were kind of always in the peripheral, even if I wasn't actively reading them. I was watching, X-Men the animated series or Batman the animated series, the cartoons, 90s cartoons. And so I was kind of always aware of superheroes and comics. And as I got older into junior high and high school, then I kind of started realizing I wanted to draw them. And it just kind of blossomed from there. I went off to school and kind of didn't really do anything with comics for a long time. But that was kind of always the style whenever I was drawing for myself, or if I had the opportunity, in school for a project, my work always went sort of comic illustrative, as far as the look and the appearance. And, life happens, ebbing and flowing in and out of jobs. And then you kind of meet the right people at the right time, and kind of moved me into that direction. And I started learning more about conventions and what other artists were doing. And social media was still something that you could kind of use to your benefit at the time that I was kind of getting into comics as far as making them. So was able to put my work out there more and meet more people and network, and kind of wound up here. So it sounds a lot, smoother than it was. It was a big bumpy road.
Yeah. So what was your first published work then? What book would you say you kind of were?
I believe the first published thing I did, I did some indie things, where somebody was self-publishing, and so they publish it themselves. I did some covers for people. First published work, I think, was probably Relics, if I'm remembering correctly. As far as through a publisher, not self-published. So.
And that was last year, right? Finished up?
It finished up beginning of last year. Yeah, January was the last issue that came out.
So, and I have that.
It might actually be almost exactly a year.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, fairly new in the industry then, and so give us the rundown of Relics.
Relics was kind of a happy accident, or I don't know if it was a happy accident, but it kind of came out of nowhere. They were looking for a replacement artist to carry on the story, and I had the opportunity to say yes, and so I jumped onto this book that had been kind of in the works for, I think, a couple of years before I knew anything about it. And had the opportunity to work with Bald and Adrian and Damien and Tim Daniel and Chad Redman and Matt Nicholas are the writers on that. So it was a really great experience, and was definitely kind of getting thrown into the deep end. So I'd gone from doing little shorts for friends and Kickstarters and pinups to suddenly having to run before I felt like I was even walking.
a scheduled book, so you actually had a timeline to go by and stuff, right?
Which is daunting.
That's quite a change, I can imagine.
Definitely.
And then you got into DC. Did you start doing covers for them, and then some B stories?
DC, DC actually. That I started off with the DC Pride last spring. So that was my first dip into DC, and that kind of just led to a little bit more work, and had the opportunity to jump onto other shorts. And I did the DC villains, and then the Von Amygdala stuff for Wonder Woman came. So it was kind of all rapid fire, which seems to be the way with comics. Is it's nothing, and then it's everything.
And then it's everything. I mean, that's so cool for you to be on a mainstream book like Wonder Woman too.
It's bucket list
over the course
stuff.
of a year, right? That's crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely pinch yourself. doesn't compute. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think many people can say like on their resume, "Oh, I was part of a book that Danny DeVito had a story in as well."
I didn't actually even know that until the book
Yeah.
was put in previews. So I was like, "What?"
That's insane. Yeah, I think when we read about that, I was like, that can't be Danny DeVito is writing a story, right? And like, oh no, they put him in the front. Like,
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think you and I had the same reaction. I had read it twice, read the release twice.
Yeah, and you got to work with Dan Mora. So what was that like? Did you work on or see the script ahead of time, and he had a lot of notes for you and stuff? Or
Dan Waters for
Dan Waters. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dan Mora's the artist. Yeah, Waters.
Yeah, the script was taken care of, so it was just delivered to me, and then I ran through layouts with Totoro was my editor on that, and then Dan, and so we ran through back and forth, figuring out areas that we kind of thought needed punching up, areas that they thought I could go a little harder on, things like that, and then just went for it. So
yeah, and that's awesome to be part of that.
Yeah, in the DC Pride book, which story did you do in that one?
I did The Question, Renee Montoya.
Oh, yeah. I remember that too. Yeah, that was
one of my favorite stories too.
Nice. Thank you so much.
We don't get enough Montoya stuff. I think.
Agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's
that's
pretty
another
awesome.
bucket list item. I think would be getting a chance to work with Vita Ayala again on Renee Montoya. I think they would kill it. So
yeah, that's so cool. And so Aquaman to be coming right now. Yep. And then going to Wonder Woman. I mean, do you change up your style at all to go from like an Aquaman book to Wonder Woman, or are you kind of just doing your same approach?
It's about the same approach, I would say. I think I went a little grittier and darker on the Renee Montoya story because it was such a Gotham story. So I went a little heavier on shadows and that kind of noir feel. Wonder Woman and Aquaman, I think I was a little cleaner. I think I had a little cleaner line style there.
Yep.
And it wasn't quite so noirish. So less shadow, less ink there. But for the most part, it's about the same. I kind of try to skirt the line between kind of tight, clean line, but also having a feel of motion in that line work as well.
Cool. Interesting. And so for this Wonder Woman story, this is part of the like overall arc that's going on, right? There's a crossover happening.
Yeah, there's going to be a big crossover event this year for Road to Trial of the Amazons was what I've been working on with Wonder Woman. And then there'll be a big crossover where all of the tribes are coming together. So it's a big deal.
Oh, that's really cool. So those books come out soon, right? I think.
Yeah, the Wonder Woman, we've been moving toward the road now. The Road to Trial of the Amazons is actively ongoing. So I believe 783 comes out this month. And then 784 will be the last installment before we get to the Trial of the Amazons.
Awesome.
And is the trial book, is that going to be crossing through the different Wonder Woman related books, or is that going to be its own limited series?
That I'm not 100% sure of. I think it's its own thing. But there'll be crossovers from other stories. So Nubia, what's happening in Nubia will come into play here. What's happening in the core Wonder Woman story will come in here. Also, Yara Flor, her story is going to come in. So all of the tribes, everything that's been happening, kind of all meets in the middle. So all those other books are building toward this.
So is that like big Zoom meetings with everybody working on the Wonder Woman projects?
I think on the core Wonder Woman book there is. For the Bana Migdal stuff, it's been a little bit more smaller team. The team that's working on that story specifically, doing meeting up in emails.
So how's it been working with you're working with Vita Ayala on that, right?
I adore Vita. I've worked with them a couple of times. We actually met before I was really doing any kind of comic stuff. Oh, wow. Really early on. So when they were working with, I think, right before they did The Wilds with Black Mask, we kind of met through the internet, the nebulousness of the internet. And just kind of, struck it up and kind of always wanted to find something to work on together. And didn't quite work, but we kind of stayed in touch with each other, and their career took off gangbusters around that time, and they've just been continuing to kill it. And so they actually asked for me for the DC Pride story, which was a humongous honor, and I can never thank them enough for that.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, they're incredible.
It's you got. I mean, over the last year, you have a pretty good rep sheet going now. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you kind of pinch yourself, and you're as with any kind of freelancing, you're kind of like, God, I hope this keeps up a little while longer because it can all go away.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've noticed with all our guests that, especially like up and coming people, that the community is something. The community that you build with other writers, other artists. I know that we work with a lot of Kickstarter people that have their own Discord channels and stuff, and everybody seems to try to help each other out as much as they can. And it seems that's kind of what helped you out too, was having a group to chat with, or
Absolutely. And comics is an interesting industry because it can feel really lonely because everybody's isolated. We're all working in various parts of the world, and so the community is really, really important, and being able to kind of network digitally. I think historically conventions were such a big deal for networking and getting your work in front of people. And now the internet is another resource that the artists and writers can use. And so developing those relationships with other creatives is really important. And, comics is a hard industry, and it's not for the faint of heart. That sounds really, really trite, but you kind of have to love it to want to work your way through it. So I think that's why people want to help each other out, because it's hard. It's hard, and it's underappreciated a lot of the time. In the broader scheme of entertainment and media, we've got the movies that kind of are taking all of the glory right now. Which I love those too, but comics kind of they get kind of pushed over here a little bit. So we all I think everybody wants to try to help one another get further along, because we know how much of a struggle it can feel like sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's got to be rough too. I mean, coming up at this time when you can't go to cons as well. You're finally getting your up and comings, and it's like, oh man, I can't go to a con and kind of promote and meet people and do all this stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's why I was talking with a friend of mine not too long ago, and it was like, the last convention I went to, I didn't have any books. I had my own art that I was doing, and little things I'd done, maybe a Kickstarter thing here or there. But so by the time I ever get back to conventions, there'll be a lot more stuff on the table than there used to be.
You're going to have a full table now. It's going to be crazy. Yeah, you're gonna have
I went from like
oh,
wannabe to actually having stuff to show people.
Awesome. Well, I mean, congrats. Over the last year, you've definitely got a lot of work going on, and you're up for freelance, you said, right? Still?
Yes.
Okay, so she's up for hire, everybody.
Covers mostly is kind of the thing I'm taking this year.
Okay, awesome.
So do you feel like we'd have to bring up one more book before we let you go, though? You did Resonant over at Vault as well.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah.
Resonant was dream project. David Andre is one of my favorite people working in comics. He's one of the most generous creators that you can hope to work with, and is a very trusting collaborator. There were a lot of times when I would just throw stuff at him and be like, what if we did this? And he was like, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, he's definitely amazing. And Jason Wordy was the colorist on Resonant, and an incredible colorist. Somebody that I just sent stuff to and was like, he'll take care of it. I never worried about what he was going to do.
That's always a good feeling.
Yeah. So it was a dream project to work with Vault again, and to work with that team. Just really an incredible group of people. And again, another situation where I was kind of coming in to take over for another artist, because Ali Alejandro had been on, I mispronounced his name. Alejandro Aragon is his last name.
Okay. Yep.
He did the first arc for Resonant and did an incredible job. And so I felt like I had big shoes to fill coming in with that second arc, but Vault was amazing and encouraging and kind of let me find my way and just take the ball and run with it. So it was an amazing experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Vault's one of those publishers that especially Mike and I have been just loving recently with all the stuff they're putting out.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got like Vertigo vibes where they're taking risks with things and doing a lot of new work and getting a lot of new creators out there with interesting and unique ideas. So they're definitely somebody to check out their titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I keep telling comic shops, like, carry more of this stuff.
Yeah.
DC's cool now too, though. I mean, Wonder Woman's awesome. So I'm a huge DC fan.
I love DC. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm always looking for like Ahoy Comics and Vault Comics at shops too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Skylar, where can we send our listeners and viewers if they want to follow you on social media?
Yeah, for sure. They can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Those are the two main ones I use the most, as at Sky Patridge. And that's SkyyePatridge. Those are the two main things as far as social media go. I also have a Ko-Fi coffee. I'm not sure how exactly you say it. No, if you like to, send people coffee and do that kind of thing, I've got one of those. Just under my name, Skylar Patridge. So
I've never even heard of that before. So you can send people, we can send you a coffee.
Yeah, well, basically what it is it's kind of like a smaller version of Patreon. So instead of doing like a month, I think you can do monthly subscriptions to somebody there, but you can just do a one-time thing, and you can decide how many coffees you want to send, and it's basically $3. Yeah, so you can be like, I'm going to send you 10 coffees, and just donate, some money to creatives.
It's a digital tip jar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I did notice on your website too, you don't have a shop yet because I was. Yeah,
not
is
yet.
That up? Are you working on that? Okay,
I'm working on it. Yeah, this year there will be a shop up there. So I've got a lot of books that hopefully people will want to buy now that I didn't have before.
Awesome. Yeah, because I'll wait for them to go up there for sure. Skylar, thanks for being on the show. Chris will have all the links, right?
Yeah, and everybody, before we take off, make sure to check the show notes. I'll have links to Skylar's website as well as the Comixology page where you can find all of her books. So make sure to check those out as well. Skylar, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was great.